7 names, 7 death warrants, 7 heads that rolled for treason against the crown. But which of these executions was justified, and which was nothing more than state murder dressed up as justice? From queens who refused to bow to kings who said God spoke through them. These are the cases that split nations, sparked wars, and left historians arguing for centuries. What happens when the ultimate crime meets the ultimate punishment, and nobody can agree if the verdict was right? If you value documented historical research like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. The script is researched and factual, using sources from the National Archives, KB 8/9 folio $9, the Imperial War Museum collections, and newly declassified Home Office files from 2020. These aren't tourist brochures, these are the actual court records and execution documents that judges held in their hands. Now back to the information. 7 cases that made the crown sweat blood. Count them with me. Number 1, Guy Fawkes, 1606, Westminster Yard. 13, April 1570 in Stonegate, York. Protestant father dies when Guy is 8. Catholic stepfather takes over. By 16, Guy is converting. By 21, he's fighting for Catholic Spain and the Netherlands. Military explosives expert, who knows gunpowder better than most men know their prayers? 1599, Thomas Winter finds him in Flanders. They return to England with one goal, blow Parliament to pieces on November 5th, 1605, 36 barrels, 1,500 pounds of gunpowder. Enough to turn the House of Lords into a crater, but Sir Thomas Knivet finds him in the cellars at midnight, November 4th. Anonymous letter tipped them off. Some say Francis Tresham wrote it to save his brother-in-law, Lord Monteagle. Fawkes gives his name as John Johnson. 5 days of torture on the rack before he breaks. Compare his signatures, neat Guido Fawkes, on November 17th. Barely legible scrawl by January. His hands were destroyed. Trial begins January 20th, 1606, Westminster Hall. 8 surviving conspirators face charges. Evidence includes his own confession, the 36 barrels, and that damning cipher Ballard used to recruit him. Fawkes argues he doesn't recognize certain charges. Legal maneuvering that fails completely. Verdict guilty on all counts. Sentence death by hanging, drawing, quartering. January 31st, execution day, Old Palace Yard, Westminster. Opposite the building they tried to destroy. 3 others go first, Thomas Winter, Ambrose Rookwood, Robert Keyes, each hanged until half dead, cut down. Disemboweled alive, beheaded, quartered. Fawkes climbs the scaffold last, body weak from torture, barely able to stand. Contemporary account says he needed help from the hangman to reach the noose. Then he jumps, breaks his neck in the fall, dies instantly. Avoids the agony of being cut open while conscious. Whether deliberate or accidental, nobody knows, but his body parts still get displayed across London, head on a pike, quarters sent to the 4 corners of the kingdom as warning. The controversy? Modern historians argue the plot was infiltrated from day one. Francis Walsingham's spy network knew every detail months in advance. They let it proceed to manufacture the perfect Catholic atrocity story. Anti-Catholic laws tightened immediately after. Convenient timing. Too convenient. Some say accused, tried, silenced. Number 2, Charles I, 1649, Whitehall, 26th November, 1599 at Dunfermline Palace, Scotland. Second son of James I, who never expected to rule. Brother Henry dies in 1612. Suddenly, Charles is heir to 3 kingdoms. 17 when his father dies. Awkward, stammering, short. Marries Catholic French princess Henrietta Maria in year 1. Protestant England immediately suspicious. The constitutional crisis builds over 11 years. Charles believes in divine right of kings. Parliament believes in parliamentary sovereignty. Ship money taxes collected without Parliament's consent. Court of Star Chamber silences opposition. Forced loans from wealthy subjects. Archbishop Laud pushes high church ceremonies that smell Catholic to Puritan noses. 1642, Civil War erupts. Charles raises his standard at Nottingham. For 7 years, England bleeds. Battle of Marston Moor. 1644, Oliver Cromwell's Ironsides cavalry smash the Royalist forces. Battle of Naseby, June 14th, 1645. Decisive parliamentary victory. 16,000 Royalists dead or captured. Charles flees to Scotland, hoping for alliance. The Scots hand him to Parliament for £400,000. 1648, Second Civil War. Charles secretly negotiates with Scotland for invasion. Parliament discovers the letters, proof of treachery while under arrest. Colonel Thomas Pride purges Parliament of moderates on December 6th. Only 80 independent MPs remain. They vote to try the king. January 20th, 1649. Westminster Hall, High Court of Justice assembled. 135 commissioners appointed, only 68 show up, many refuse to participate. Lord General Fairfax resigns rather than condemn his king. John Bradshaw presides, wearing reinforced hat in case of assassins. Charles enters Westminster Hall. Solicitor General John Cook rises to read charges. Charles taps Cook's shoulder with his walking stick. "Hold," he commands. Cook ignores him. Charles strikes Cook's shoulder so hard the silver tip of his cane breaks off and clatters to the floor. Nobody helps him pick it up. The King of England stoops to retrieve his own walking stick. The charges: waging war against Parliament and people, betraying public trust, attempting to establish tyrannical power. Charles refuses to enter a plea. He denies the court has jurisdiction over an anointed king. "I would know by what power I am called hither," he says. "I would know by what authority, I mean lawful authority." 7 days of proceedings. Charles maintains dignified defiance throughout. Claims he represents the true liberties of the people, not Parliament, which represents only itself. The verdict inevitable: guilty of tyranny, treason, murder, and being a public enemy to the good people of the nation. January 30th, execution day, banqueting house, Whitehall, scaffold draped in black. Charles wears 2 shirts against the cold. The season is so sharp as probably may make me shake, which some observers may imagine proceeds from fear. He steps through the window onto the platform, the crowd pressed so far back they cannot hear his final speech. I go from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown," he says, kneels at the block, one stroke of the axe. The executioner holds up the severed head. "Behold the head of a traitor." The crowd responds with groans, not cheers. Controversy runs deeper than regicide. Charles was the first European monarch tried and executed by his own subjects. It established a precedent that terrified every crown in Europe. But many legal scholars argue the trial was illegal from start to finish. The court had no constitutional authority. The Purge Parliament represented nobody. The king's refusal to recognize proceedings meant no proper trial occurred. Yet others say it was democracy's birth cry, the people judging their ruler, holding power accountable to law, not God, judgment, revolution, precedent. Number 3, Anne Boleyn, 1536, Tower Green, born around 1501 in Norfolk, daughter of Thomas Boleyn, educated in Netherlands and France, sophisticated, intelligent, magnetic, returns to England 1522, serves Catherine of Aragon as maid of honor. Black eyes, olive skin, quick wit. Henry VIII notices her by 1526. Not conventionally beautiful, too tall, too dark, too sharp-tongued for Tudor tastes, but she has something that drives the king wild. The king's great matter begins. Henry wants to divorce Catherine. Marry Anne. 7 years of theological arguments, diplomatic pressure, papal refusal. Anne holds out. No sex without marriage. Finally, January 25th, 1533, they marry in secret. Pregnant Anne becomes queen. September 7th, she gives birth to Elizabeth, not the son Henry desperately needed. 1536, disaster strikes in waves. January 7th, Catherine of Aragon dies. January 29th, Anne miscarries, the fetus reportedly male and deformed. Henry already pursuing Jane Seymour. The marriage that split England from Rome is collapsing. May Day tournament. Anne watches from the royal box. Henry suddenly leaves. She never sees him again as a free woman. May 2nd, arrested at Greenwich Palace. Tower barge carries her to the same cell where she prepared for her coronation 3 years earlier. The charges assembled by Thomas Cromwell read like a catalogue of impossibilities. Adultery with Henry Norris, groom of the stool. Adultery with William Brereton, gentleman of the Privy Chamber. Adultery with Francis Weston, gentleman of the Privy Chamber. Adultery with Mark Smeaton, court musician. Incest with her brother George Boleyn, Lord Rochford. Conspiring the king's death so she could marry Henry Norris. The dates are impossible. She was supposed to be committing adultery at Windsor on October 6, 1534, but court records show her at Greenwich. She allegedly seduced Weston at Greenwich on May 20th, 1535, but she was at Richmond. The prosecution doesn't care. They have testimony from Mark Smeaton, extracted under torture. May 15th, Anne's trial. Great Hall of the Tower. 27 peers sit in judgment, including her own uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, and her former fiancé, Henry Percy, 6th Earl of Northumberland. She enters wearing black damask, French hood, pearl necklace, calm, dignified, defiant. She denies every charge, points out the impossible dates, questions how she could have committed these acts under constant supervision, explains her conversations with Norris as courtly flirtation. Not seduction. The evidence against her is gossip, jealousy, and one tortured musician's confession. Guilty. Unanimous verdict. Percy collapses during the announcement, carried from the courtroom, dies childless 8 months later. May 17th. Archbishop Cranmer declares the marriage null and void. If the marriage never existed, how can there be adultery? The legal contradiction is ignored. May 19th, Execution Day. Tower Green, not Tower Hill. Private execution for a queen, not public spectacle. French swordsman imported from Calais. Henry's one mercy, death by sword, not axe. Faster, cleaner, more dignified. 8 in the morning, small crowd of nobles and officials. Anne wears gray damask gown, white ermine mantle, white coif, no blindfold. She wants to see it coming. Short speech praising the king's goodness, asking prayers for her soul. Kneels upright, hands clasped. Single stroke, severs head from body. Henry is playing tennis at Hampton Court when the cannon fires, signaling her death. He immediately rides to meet Jane Seymour. The controversy never ended. Modern historians overwhelmingly believe Anne was innocent. The charges were fabricated to give Henry grounds for remarriage. Thomas Cromwell orchestrated the plot after Anne opposed his policies on church revenues and foreign affairs. The timeline evidence is conclusive. She couldn't have been where the prosecution claimed, but Henry may have convinced himself she was guilty. Paranoid kings see plots everywhere. Anne's sharp tongue and political meddling made her enemies. Her failure to produce a son made her expendable. Justice became whatever the king needed it to be. Innocent, framed, silenced. Number 4, Roger Casement, 1916, Pentonville Prison, 1st September 1864, Dublin, Protestant family, father dies when Roger is 13. British consular service from 1892. Congo investigations expose Belgian atrocities. Natives, hands cut off for failing rubber quotas. Peru investigations reveal similar horrors in Amazon rubber trade. Knighted 1911 for humanitarian service, Sir Roger Casement, defender of human rights across 2 continents. But Congo and Peru changed him. The brutality he documented wasn't just colonial excess, it was imperial system functioning exactly as designed, same logic that crushed Irish peasants for 800 years. 1914, he's writing for nationalist publications. 1916, full revolution. War breaks out. Casement travels to Berlin, seeking German military support for Irish rebellion. Tries to recruit Irish prisoners of war into Irish Brigade to fight Britain. Gets minimal German interest, a ship of rifles, no troops. By April 1916, he realizes the planned Easter Rising will be slaughter without German army backing. Good Friday, April 21st, German U-boat surfaces off Kerry Coast. 3 men paddle ashore at Bannistrand: Casement, Robert Monteith, Daniel Bailey. Mission now to stop the rising, not support it. But Casement is sick with malaria, can barely walk. Found next morning by RIC Sergeant at McKenna's Fort, an ancient ring fort. 3 pistols discovered nearby. Arrested on weapons charges. Transported to London. Interrogated at Scotland Yard. Initially gives false name. Reveals identity April 26th, same day Easter. Rising begins in Dublin. The irony is perfect. He's trying to prevent the rebellion while being arrested for supporting it. Trial begins June 26th. Old Bailey courtroom packed. International press attention. Charge is high treason under Treason Act 1351, adhering to the king's enemies. But there's a problem. Casement was born American, raised Irish, Monarchist worked British colonial service. Which nation does he owe allegiance to? Prosecution argues he held British passport, received British diplomatic protection, swore British colonial service oath. Therefore British subject who betrayed his country. Defense argues American birth, Irish upbringing, no genuine British loyalty, traveling to Germany for Irish independence, not German victory. Evidence includes his own statements in Germany, witness testimony from prison camps, letters found in his possession. Casement's speech from dock lasts an hour, classic nationalist rhetoric about Ireland's right to seek aid wherever she can find it. Where all your rights become only an accumulated wrong, he says, then surely it is braver, saner, and truer thing to be a rebel in act and deed. Guilty verdict, July 29th. Death sentence. Appeals to Court of Criminal Appeal, then House of Lords, both rejected. Execution scheduled August 3rd, but something else is happening. Government circulating what they call the Black Diaries, typescript excerpts allegedly from Casement's private journals during Congo and Peru service, explicit descriptions of homosexual encounters with natives, payments for sex, graphic details of anatomy and performance. Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, petitions Prime Minister for clemency. George Bernard Shaw writes supporting letters. W. B. Yeats mobilizes literary establishment. Then they see the diary excerpts. Support evaporates overnight. Homosexuality in 1916 means degeneracy, perversion, unmanliness. How can this sexual deviant be Irish patriot? August 3rd, 9 a.m. Pentonville Prison. Casement has converted to Catholicism during final days in cell. Receives last rites from Irish priest. Priest later says, "We should pray to him, not for him," calls him a saint. Executioner John Ellis performs the hanging, body buried in prison lime pit. The controversy explodes 40 years later when Black Diary is released for limited inspection. Handwriting experts argue for decades about authenticity. Irish nationalists claim forgery, British dirty trick to destroy Casement's reputation. British officials insist genuine. Casement was homosexual. Diaries prove it. 2002 forensic analysis concludes diaries authentic. But debate continues. Even if genuine, circulating them during clemency appeals was character assassination. Government used sexual orientation to ensure execution of political prisoner. 1965. Remains returned to Ireland. State funeral in Dublin. 30,000 mourners. President Eamon de Valera attends. Last surviving Easter Rising leader honoring the man who tried to stop it. Patriot or traitor? Saint or sinner? The evidence changed everything except the rope. Humanitarian. Rebel. Mystery. Number 5. William Joyce, 1946. Wandsworth Prison, 24th April, 1906. Brooklyn, New York. Irish father, English mother. Family moves to Ireland, 1909. Then England, 1922, after Irish partition. William joins British Union of Fascists, 1933. Deputy leader by 1938. Sharp intelligence, sharper tongue, violent anti-Semitism. August 1939, war approaching. Joyce lies on British passport application, claims British birth to get travel documents, flees to Germany with wife Margaret. Starts broadcasting for Nazi propaganda ministry, September 18th. Germany calling, the voice that will haunt British airwaves for 6 years. Lord Haw Haw, they call him. Daily Express journalist Jonah Barrington coins the nickname. English of the Haw, Haw. Damn it, get out of my way variety. Actually refers to Wolfe Midler initially, but Joyce takes over the show by year-end. Perfect Oxford accent, delivering poison across the airwaves. January 1940, BBC research shows 6 million regular listeners, 18 million occasional ones. 1 in 6 adults tuning in regularly to hear Britain mocked, ridiculed, threatened. Joyce knows bombing targets before they're hit. Names, streets, buildings, casualties. British intelligence can't figure out his sources. Quality entertainment, even government admits. Dramatic delivery. Inside knowledge, sardonic wit. More exciting than BBC's dry wartime programming, working-class families gather around wireless sets, laughing at Joyce's sneers while secretly worried about the accuracy of his predictions. Broadcasts continue throughout war. Berlin to Hamburg as Allied bombing intensifies, growing drunk as German defeat approaches. April 30th, 1945. Final broadcast, rambling, incoherent, defiant. Signs off with Heil Hitler and farewell, just as Hitler shoots himself in bunker below. May 28th. Captured near Danish border. British soldiers on patrol engage him in conversation. One recognizes the unmistakable voice. Joyce reaches for identity papers. Soldier thinks it's weapon, shoots him in the leg. The voice of Nazi Germany brought down by nervous trigger finger. Back to London in chains. Huge publicity. Enemy number 1 captured alive. But the treason case is legally complex. Joyce was American-born, never British subject, naturalized German citizen by 1940. How can American betray Britain? Prosecution finds solution. Joyce held fraudulent British passport from August 26, 1939 until July 2, 1940. During that period, entitled to British diplomatic protection, therefore owed allegiance in return. Broadcasts during that window constitute treason. Trial September 17th. Old Bailey packed. Joyce appears calm, composed, defiant, still claiming American citizenship, German naturalization, no British loyalty. Evidence includes broadcast transcripts, witness testimony, his own admissions in Germany, 3 days of proceedings. Judge instructs jury to acquit on charges covering post-1940 period when passport expired. But the window from August 39 to July 40, during which he definitely broadcast, makes him guilty of treason. Verdict, guilty on 1 count. Death sentence. Appeals to Court of Appeal. Then House of Lords. Lord Porter dissents, argues no evidence Joyce kept passport for use after September 18th, Therefore, no continuing allegiance. Majority upholds conviction. January 3rd, 1946, 9 a.m. Wandsworth Prison. Executioner Albert Pierre Point performs the hanging, same man who hanged Nazi war criminals at Nuremberg. Joyce's last words reportedly, "In death as in life, I defy the Jews who caused this last war." Unrepentant Nazi to the end, controversy burns for decades. Legal scholars argue the conviction was stretch. American citizen with fraudulent passport hardly qualifies for treason charges. Joyce's nationality was so complex, even he wasn't sure which country claimed him. But wartime emotion demanded blood. Someone had to pay for 6 years of Germany calling. His wife, Margaret, also broadcaster, never charged. Rumors persist. Joyce made deal. Stay silent about MI5 connections. Wife goes free. No evidence ever produced, but British intelligence files on Joyce remain classified. Last person executed for treason in British history. The voice that taunted Britain silenced forever. Propagandist, citizen, number 6, Thomas More, 1535, Tower Hill, February 7th, 1478, Cheapside, London, son of judge. Brilliant student ass, lawyer's training, classical education. Humanist scholar who corresponds with Erasmus. Author of Utopia, the book that imagines perfect society based on reason and virtue. Man for all seasons, who rises from merchant's son to Lord Chancellor of England. Henry VIII's great matter puts More in impossible position. The king needs scholarly support for divorce from Catherine of Aragon. Scripture, canon law, papal authority, these are More's specialties. But More studies the evidence and concludes the marriage is valid. Divorce would defy God's law. More tries to stay out of it. Accepts Lord Chancellorship in 1529 on condition he won't handle marriage case. Keeps his mouth shut as Henry assembles theological arguments. Hopes silence will protect him. But Henry needs everyone's endorsement. Silence is not enough. Act of succession. 1534 requires oath accepting Henry's children by Anne Boleyn as legitimate heirs. More will take succession oath, accepts new dynasty if Parliament wills it. But the preamble requires rejecting papal authority over English church. This he cannot do. April 17th, 1534. Lambeth Palace. More appears before Archbishop Cranmer, Chancellor Audley, Thomas Cromwell, offered the oath, reads it carefully, will accept succession, rejects the preamble, arrested immediately, Tower of London. 15 months of pressure. Interrogations by Cromwell's commissioners, demands to know his opinion of royal supremacy. More stays silent, neither approves nor condemns. "I am the king's faithful subject and daily beadsman," he says. "While I pray for him and all his and all the realm." November 1534. Treason Act passes. Makes it treason to deprive the king of his dignity, title, or name by malicious words or writing. The law is written specifically for More and Bishop Fisher. Their silence itself becomes treasonous. Denial of Henry's title as supreme head of the church. May 7th, 1535. Final interrogation. Solicitor General Richard Rich visits More's cell to remove his books. During conversation, Rich asks hypothetical question, what if Parliament made Rich king? More answers it would be treason for subjects to resist. Rich presses, what if Parliament made the king supreme head of church? More allegedly replies, no Parliament could make the king head of Christendom. Rich's testimony becomes the key evidence. More denounces it as perjury during trial. But the trap is set. July 1st, trial begins. Westminster Hall. Panel includes Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk, Anne Boleyn's uncle, also Thomas Boleyn, Anne's father, also George Boleyn, Anne's brother. The Boleyn faction sitting in judgment on the man who opposed their marriage. Charges: depriving the king of his royal dignity by refusing supremacy oath, confederacy with Bishop Fisher, speaking treasonable words to Richard Rich. More defends brilliantly, attacks Rich's credibility, challenges the new Treason Act's constitutionality, argues his silence proves nothing. But the verdict is predetermined. Guilty. 15 minutes deliberation. Sentenced to traitor's death, hanging, drawing, quartering. Henry commutes to beheading. The only mercy shown. July 6th. Early morning. Tower Hill. Public scaffold. Not private execution. More wears his finest clothes. He's going to meet his God. Climb scaffold carefully. The structure seems shaky. I pray you, see me safe up, he tells the guard. For my coming down, let me shift for myself. Final speech. Asks prayers for the king. Declares himself the king's good servant, but God's first. Kneels at block. Single stroke of the axe. Head displayed on London Bridge for month as warning. The controversy splits Catholic and Protestant worlds. To Catholics, More's martyr who died defending church unity. To Protestants, he's stubborn papist who put foreign pope above English king. Modern historians debate whether More was saint or fanatic, principled stand or dangerous precedent, but the legal case was weak. More never spoke treason openly. His silence was interpreted as denial. Rich's testimony was probably perjured. The new Treason Act was retroactively applied to silence that occurred before the law existed. Yet Henry needed More's submission more than anyone else's. The most respected intellectual in England, rejecting royal supremacy, undermined the entire Reformation. More's death was judicial murder dressed as legal process, conscience, principle, sacrifice. Number 7, Mary Queen of Scots, 1587, Fotheringhay Castle. December 8th, 1542, Linlithgow Palace, Scotland. 6 days old when father dies, Queen of Scotland from birth, sent to France age 5 for safety and education. Marries Dauphin. Frances in 1558, briefly Queen of France as well as Scotland. Widowed 1560. Returns to Scotland. Catholic queen in increasingly Protestant land. 2 disastrous marriages. Lord Darnley murdered 1567. Earl of Bothwell widely believed responsible. Mary marries Bothwell 3 months later. Scottish nobles rebel, force abdication. Mary flees to England 1568, throwing herself on cousin Elizabeth's mercy. 19 years of captivity follow. Mary is next in line to English throne after Elizabeth, Catholic alternative to Protestant settlement. Every Catholic plot against Elizabeth centers on Mary as replacement queen. She knows it. Elizabeth knows it. The situation cannot last forever. Walsingham sets the trap perfectly. Babington plot. 1586 brings everything together. Anthony Babington, young Catholic idealist. John Ballard, Jesuit priest, plan to assassinate Elizabeth, free Mary, restore Catholic England with Spanish military support. Mary's correspondence appears secure. Letters smuggled in and out of Chartley Manor hidden in beer barrels. Secret cipher ensures privacy, or so Mary believes. Every letter goes through Walsingham's hands first. Thomas Philippus, his codebreaker, reads everything. July 17th, 1586. Mary writes her reply to Babington. In cipher, she approves assassination plan, gives detailed advice about timing, support needed, foreign assistance required. Francis Walsingham has his smoking gun. Babington and conspirators arrested August 4th through 15th. Tortured, tried, executed September 20th. Horrific deaths, hanging, drawing, quartering. But their suffering is prologue. Mary is the real target. October 14th. Trial begins. Fotheringhay Castle, Great Chamber. 36 commissioners, nobles, bishops, earls. Mary enters protesting. She's anointed queen, not English subject. No English court has jurisdiction over her. The trial is illegal from beginning to end. Evidence presented methodically. Original, cipher, decoded letters, testimony from her own secretaries, Now and Curl, who broke under interrogation. Mary denies everything. Claims never knew Babington or Ballard. Insists the cipher evidence is fabricated. But her secretaries confirm the letters are genuine. The cipher is verified. The case is overwhelming. October 25th, guilty verdict. Only Lord Zouche votes for acquittal. Death sentence unanimous otherwise. Elizabeth hesitates for months. Executing anointed queen sets terrible precedent. What if Mary's son, James, allies with Catholic powers for revenge? Parliament petitions for immediate execution. Elizabeth delays, hopes someone else will solve the problem. February 1st, 1587, Elizabeth finally signs,